Somlani here with you. It's a pleasure to see you as always. We have several updates about and around Ukraine. And before we start, let me remind you that we keep running our fundraiser, the drone fundraiser for the 4th Operative Brigade of the National Guard Rubizh, the drones that save lives. Sergey, hello, my friend. It's a pleasure to see you again. Tell us, how are you, where you are, what you do, and did you eat well?
Oh, hi, and thank you. Thank you very much for having invited me for this. I think it's already fourth or at least third our live broadcasting within this campaign for the 4th Brigade Rubizh of the National Guard of Ukraine. And we know all that Operative Starsky is a veteran of this brigade, and it's an honor for me to be a part of this donation campaign and raising donations with Starsky and with other amazing people for the brigade to purchase drones for these brigades, drones that save lives. Check for the donation link in the description of this video and donate for drones for the Ukrainian army, for the Ukrainian National Guard, for the 4th Brigade. And they will be in the best hands and bring a lot of joy and support for the soldiers. But yes, like coming back to your question, I'm in Ukraine now, currently in Lviv. Today in the morning I've been to Kiev, so now I've spent about I think 9 hours traveling to Lviv. It happened something which normally never happens in Ukraine. My train had 2 hours delay. Normally in Ukraine, if a train gets like 2 minutes delay, you are already shocked. And this time it was like 2 hours delay. And I thought, okay, am I in Germany? Did Deutsche Bahn, German railway, already purchase Ukrainian railway? Because these delays is normally what is typical for Germany, in contrary to the image of German railways. But no, when I left my train, I still was in Ukraine, in the beautiful city of Lviv. And yes, thank you, Andrei, thank you, Brother Starsky. I've eaten well after having got out of the train. Yes, thank you.
That's very, very important. What is your mission right now?
Well, it is it is what we do here. We stick to traveling in Ukraine because planes do not fly here. Of course, everyone who knows what is going on here, they know that no planes are flying over Ukraine except of military ones. Connection are in the air in Ukraine. So when you travel, and Ukraine is a pretty big country. It is the largest European country with about 1,500 kilometers, over 1,000 miles from east to west. And when you travel here, you either stick to the car or to train if you want to meet someone in person, if you want to attend some event or some meeting, you go by car or by train. Yes, and it is actually it is something what many people do not think, how many small things impact the comfort of traveling. For example, you need to calculate the curfew because in most regions, starting from midnight until 5 a.m. or 6 a.m., you may not travel. You may not be in the street. So you don't drive your car. You cannot say, okay, I will maybe go today at 9 p.m. and I will be on my destination at 2 a.m. No, it's not possible. Or in some regions, curfew is even longer. Or, for example, in some areas, you deal with a lot of GPS jamming or spoofing. You travel a road using your GPS navigator in your car, and suddenly you realize, okay, I don't know where I am because my GPS navigation system doesn't show me where I am, or supposes that I'm, and road signs are not available or they're blacked out, like they're literally covered with black paint because some 2 years ago maybe 1 year ago, they have been blacked out because there was a danger that Russian troops will appear there, or Russian sabotage groups. So you don't know where we do, and you just try to remember the road. Or as long as the GPS is functioning, you get like your order from the GPS navigator, like you go 35 miles and then turn right. And in that moment, you look at your computer at the car and say, okay, my track on the miles is, let me say, 5,640 miles. And the GPS navigator told me in 35 miles I need to turn right. Okay, so when I will get to that number, I need to be careful and look for the right turn. In a case when my GPS navigator will just suddenly freeze and show no movement, I will still know that I have like 7 miles driving further. Like small tricks you need to remember.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when Russians invaded Hostomel, we painted, of course, we like blacked out all the signs, all the road signs, names of the streets, etc., etc. And there's this very, very specific turn to my brigade from the main street, and there are several such turns. And normally I would always drive like usual, right? And after they painted out the names of the street, I lost myself 2 times when I was there, and I served in this brigade for years, and it was tricky. It was tricky. Let's talk about this, because this morning we received several very interesting updates, and one of them is, I would say, really, really encouraging, because already 14th Russian general became good in Balashikha, not even in Moscow, but he was, as far as I remember, like a deputy chief of general staff of Russian Federation, and he was a lieutenant general, which is higher than general major, basically. We have already 14th Russian general eliminated, with 13th killed just months ago. At the same time, Ukraine hasn't lost a single one, besides General Zaluzhny and General Budanov, who keep being killed every like other month, and then they keep respawning over and over again. What does this 14th good Russian general tell you personally in terms of Russia's vulnerability?
Well, indeed, and it is not the first Russian general assassinated far beyond the front line in Moscow. And we remember that there have been assassinations of other high-rank generals in Moscow. Like one was killed, if I'm not mistaken, with an electro scooter being parked close to his apartment. And yeah, I read like in the chat that I'm freezing sometimes. I'm very sorry. I'm in a hotel now, and this is the best internet connection which I can get. I hope it will not freeze a lot, and I hope that maybe my video part is freezing, but the sound is still coming through. Once again, I'm very sorry. We have German, like practically German conditions here since today. Trains are coming late. Internet is not working. I'm afraid tomorrow Angela Merkel will replace Volodymyr Zelensky. I hope it will not be the case. Well, so speaking on Russian generals, yeah, and they keep dying, and it shows that actually Ukrainian intelligence is so good. And we were talking all the time about will Ukraine implement some tactics of punishing war criminals, like for example Israel's Mossad used to do. And it looks like it is, at least as we have seen, We have seen that also lower rank Russian war criminals have found their violent end. A naval officer, I think he was commander or captain. No, he was captain. He was captain of Russian Navy who fired cruise missiles on Vinnytsia, having killed several children early this war. Have died in some gunshots during his jogging somewhere in Russian Krasnodar region, I think. And it's not the only case. So Ukraine slowly but clearly clears this mass. And I think that when we look at the situations which happened recently in Russia, deep in Russia, we can see that it looks like Ukrainian leadership has given a green light to several operations, well, weeks and maybe even months. We have seen a very successful attack on the 51st ammunition depot close to Russia's Vladimir, not far from Moscow, northeast, from Moscow. And it was a spectacular blast with a lot of secondary blasts, looking like a volcano eruption.
270,000 tons of ammunition.
A firework second to none.
Yeah.
And we know that there have been a lot of North Korean ballistic missiles, KN-23, freshly delivered to Russia. These missiles will never fly against Ukraine or hitting Ukrainian civilians, which is always a good thing that they have been destroyed in Russia. And not only that, we have seen several very successful Ukrainian attacks on a sort of sacred targets in Russia. And I can imagine that until like recent several days, Ukrainian leadership just kept telling the military intelligence and the special commanders, guys, do nothing because we are in negotiations and we need to check everything and we need to be very careful. But only in a case when negotiations, when we will see that negotiations lead to nowhere, you will get green lighted. And the fact that they have obviously been green lighted shows that negotiations with Donald Trump's administration's mediation have failed.
Yeah. I have a rather interesting question. We were talking about Ukrainian intelligence that made this operation of making a Russian general good possible. In your personal opinion, could it be that Western intelligence was also involved in this?
Oh, well, we don't know. I think to inform Western counterparts and Western allies about their plans. And each and every time, leaks have happened, and Russians have been informed. Or, what is not much better, the West started to tell Ukraine, oh, you need to think twice about it. It's too dangerous. The consequences are unclear. We need to rethink it. Maybe the target is too big. Maybe it's not the right time. Maybe you just postpone it. And then nothing happened. So I think that for many Ukrainian ones, one of the key components, key ingredients of their success was that the West was not informed, or was misinformed, or was informed too late, or in a very insignificant way. We know that the Kursk operation, the Kursk incursion, was a result of keeping the West in darkness. We know that the destruction of the cruise missile Moskva was something what happened without any informing of the West. Like the Ukraine just got information from the West and said, okay, sorry, we have things to do, important things, we disappear now. And then next moment, 2 Neptune missiles have hit Moscow, to the dread of the US-American partners. And that is actually the normal case. And every time, like Kherson offensive or 2023 July offensive, summer offensive, they have failed not only, and maybe not mostly, but some to some extent, because the West was informed.
Oh my God. It's hard to understand where where the danger really comes from. Speaking of this Russian general who became good, General Moskalik, such a great last name, by the way. In your opinion, because you know that society a bit better than me, how are Russian citizens reacting, if at all, to the deaths of so many senior military figures in Russia, or they generally don't care? Because if 14 generals were killed, for example, in Germany or in Italy, in France,
Nobody would notice.
you think so?
We have so many of them. I know, of course they will, but it will be
Yeah.
no impact. It will be no impact to Bundeswehr's fighting capacities, I'm afraid.
We just had a commentary from a user, it wasn't me, who says, if Ukraine so much degraded in terms of trains and internet, degraded to the level of Germany, then it's definitely time to take Ukraine to the European Union, which I completely agree. Yeah, but speaking of Russian reaction, do you think there will be some kind of consequence? Do you think that it will be like a huge blow in terms of like Russian morale, or they just don't give a damn?
Oh, that's a very good question. And my answer is mostly it's between I don't know and I don't think so. I don't know, because of course Russia remains, as any autocracy, to a certain extent a black box. And what I want to tell is that autocracies or totalitarian regimes, and much more totalitarian regimes, they don't produce a lot of feedback. And their strength is in suppressing feedback, any feedback. You are not allowed even to praise Vladimir Putin on your own if it is not a centralized, approved, and even ordered way, because too much self decisiveness and self formation is not welcomed. We have seen such things in the first 2 years of the full-scale when Russian FSB service hunted volunteer groups who raised donations to buy some equipment for the Russian army, because they thought that the harm from such unauthorized activities is larger than the profit from supporting the army. Because when you raise donations for the Russian army, that first means that you think that Russian army is not supplied in a sufficient way, which is already borderline to criticism against the leader Vladimir Putin and his Minister of Defense. And secondly, who knows what you will do with all the positive image and political power and political background you automatically generate when you raise donations for the army. And that was not welcomed in Russia. So feedback, any feedback, positive or negative, is a thing which such societies try to suppress. That's why, on one hand, you can hold for much longer time, running economy into very bad way, a very bad direction, because you don't have negative feedback, because people are afraid to say so, because there is no way to impact your wrong decisions, etc. So it can create an impression that you may allow as a leader a lot of mistakes which would have costed you your job in a democracy. And that's true. But as this feedback is suppressed, the collapse is much more spectacular and dramatic. Because when you really bring the situation to a level of boiling and explosion, it's a real nuclear explosion. You don't get snap elections in a dictatorship. You get a coup d'etat, and the great leader finds himself in a prison or maybe killed in a strait. So, coming back to your question, we don't know what is Russia's society reaction towards the the next death of the next general, because there is no open discussion on that. We can only assume that there is some discussion within the army. We can only assume that there is some discussion within the intelligence. We can only assume there are maybe some jokes within the society. And I hope that Ukrainian intelligence spreads these jokes carefully in Russia, among Russians, to undermine Russia's trust to their own authorities. Yes, but will it harm the system strongly enough to damage it on a significant way? I don't know. And then we also come to another interesting aspect of assassinating military leadership. We know it from targeted strikes by the American drones like Rubizh against Al Qaeda. And there was an interesting phenomenon there that the Americans believed for a longer time that if you targetedly kill leaders of Al Qaeda gets weaker, because people with knowledge, with leadership, gets executed, killed, and many people don't want to go to be the next leader. Like this, this joke about the new leadership of the Hezbollah, that anyone who is about to be promoted as a new leader of Hezbollah wants to avoid this job because they know they will not last for a longer time. So that was the presumption. But interestingly and paradoxically, the result was not always as expected, because sometimes corrupt, older, rigid leaders who came to their jobs and didn't let the new, fresh ideas come through their leadership, they got removed by a Hellfire missile. And new prospective leaders, the younger ones, who were blocked by them, got promoted and brought the Al Qaeda cell to much larger success compared to what their predecessors allowed to do. So we don't know who will come to the next level to do this job as the next one. But I think that strategically it's a good direction. Also because it shows, first of all, to the West that Ukrainian capacities are of amazing quality and scale. And you don't mess with the Ukrainians, and you want to have Ukrainians on your side as a security asset and as an ally. You don't want to leave Ukraine alone, because actually it's a great army, a great number of intelligence agencies. And why not to have them integrated into our NATO security? NATO will be stronger with Ukraine compared to NATO without Ukraine.
I agree on that, and I think that a lot of our European viewers clearly understand this moment. And I would also like to remind our dear viewers, our dear friends and family, that we are running the fundraiser for the 4th Operative Brigade of the National Guard Rubizh, the glorious and legendary Hostomel Brigade, where I was privileged to serve Since 2016 until 2023, and those were some craziest and coolest days of my life. You can find all the necessary information in the description. And you mentioned the Russian volunteers that were bringing some stuff to Russians. You know, I remember 2019, 2020, we were operating at the Svitlodarsk Bulge, and we were kind of spotting some of them. And I remember there was this one volunteer who brought, because in Zaitsevo, for example, in Zaitsevo back then, stationed was Luhansk militia, so-called. Basically a bunch of alcoholics and like truck users from Luhansk area, and they were extremely poor. And for example, I remember there was this volunteer from Russia who would bring them necessary supplies like rubber flip-flops. I totally remember this one because I was following her page. Then shovels, of course, and stuff like that. And it ended when she posted like this report from coming to those positions and bringing those individuals, all those things. She posted a photo where she was standing together with those terrorists, and behind her there was like this building with a number on it. And it took us literally like 15 minutes to understand where their base was. So it was kind of funny. It stopped existing, but at the same time, comparing those Russian so-called volunteers, basically supporters of the Russian terrorism, and comparing volunteers like you, for example, or volunteers that we can see plenty in our chat right now, bringing us drones, radars, night vision goggles, and things like that, including things like long-range drones. That amazing initiative in the Baltic countries, buying Ukraine things like Bayraktar drones in like 2022. Oh my God! This is something that clearly shows me that Ukraine will win this war, because Russia is supported by its amazing, beautiful allies such as North Korea, which basically turned into its probably main weapon industry, right? Shell producing industry, while Ukraine is still, until this day, 2025, but Ukraine is still supported by all world, basically, for approximately 50 countries officially, and not non-officially, from United States to Europe to Asia, countries like Japan, countries like South Korea. I remember this absolutely crazy moment when I went to Maidan, and there was this like Stella. It was 2023. I remember well because I was making an interview with my friend who died a bit later. But we were sitting next to this like Stella, and on this Stella there were flags with numbers of volunteers who gave their life for Ukraine. And among those flags was flag of Iran, flag of Burma, flag of Thailand, places like that. People coming to Ukraine from all around the world, countries that you never even think about often, but they were brave enough to realize the necessity and importance of doing the right thing. I wanted to ask you this. What kind of again, returning to the good Russian general, what kind of long-term strategic or political consequences can we expect as a result of these high-level losses? Because you mentioned the example when, for example, like an old, mature leader, like warlord, was eliminated, and then his death basically gave a way for a younger and less corrupted, probably more professional, again probably leader or general or commander. Can we see the same in Russia? What can be the consequences of eliminating of so many Russian generals? Will we see, like, Russian army getting rid of corruption due to these efforts, good efforts made by Ukrainian intelligence, or what can be the consequence of that?
Well, I wish Russian army a lot of corruption. I wish Russian army to swim in corruption, to leave only corruption way. I wish Russian generals to be mega rich by stealing everything from their soldiers: food, ammunition, uniforms, medikits, fuel, armor, everything. And that's why I'm afraid that the anti-corruption way of activity of Russia's so-called liberal opposition is extremely damaging. Okay, not as damaging as it could be, because Russia's opposition is not capable to anything, even of supporting Putin. But it is still damaging. Like we all know, this large report by Navalny Foundation in early 2023, who embezzles money in Russia's missile production. And they have demonstrated it pretty good, how Russian owners of missile producing factories embezzle money in multi-digit level, like hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, to buy themselves villas and cars, and spending them on luxury objects, etc. And I thought, what the hell are you doing? What the hell are you doing? It is amazing that Russia burns money into something which doesn't kill Ukrainians, instead of producing more missiles which kill Ukrainians. And you know what? Like Putin's apparatus have cleaned up this corrupt nest in missile production. And starting from later 2023, the Russians have started to produce more missiles, much more missiles, and we see now results. Okay, so I wish Russian army to be corrupt. I wish Russian soldiers to be angry on them, to be desperate, to willing to escape from the battlefront, and not being capable to fight because they don't know, they don't have ammunition, guns, proper equipment, etc. But coming back to your question about the will this fall of the generals have a sort of impact, positive impact. I think for this impact, you need a lot of intensity. You need like one general being killed, let me say, a week or 2 weeks. If this happens, then they will start to first to be afraid, to spend much more time and money and efforts into security. Paranoia will rise. They will arrest some people who will be not connected to real Ukrainian intelligence services, and will accuse them of being agents. And it is good. It is always good when they do stupid things, and when panic is spreading, and they do things which don't bring any positive effect. But for that, you need to kill like one general, like every, let me say, 2-3 weeks, which maybe will not happen. So the guaranteed stable effect will not take place, I'm afraid. Does it mean that no positive effect will take place? Of course not. Of course, there will be positive effect. Any replacement needs time. Any replacement leads to a sort of adjustment of the system, because new person brings new rules, new habits, etc. So there will be a sort of delay in the functioning of this structure, and that's good. That's good. And we hope that the next one will be not better, but at least the same and maybe even worse than the current one, which is also good. So after all, it's good. And we know that, as I have already told you, we know there are cases of assassination of lower level criminals, like officers of the Russian Air Force who go to their flights day by day, knowingly that their flights will result in deaths of civilians and attacks on protected infrastructure, on hospitals, on schools, on residential areas. And when they die, it can be a signal to others, like, maybe you at least retire early, okay? Because, there are things which can end dangerously for you. But once again, in each of these directions of impacting Russia's army, the intensity and the chances of being hit from the point of view of the Russian soldiers and officers are extremely important. Russia has a couple of thousand of generals, maybe more. If you kill two of them, most of them will not think this fate would meet them, and they must think about it. Only in this case, the result will be really, really measurable.
I agree on that. Currently, Russia has probably like the biggest number of generals in our part of planet, but when we speak about those successful operations that were performed by different anonymous people, it makes me just, admire the way that those people can operate on the Russian territory and basically bring the war back to the Russian territory, which is something important. This is something important that we should keep doing, and we are successful in that. It's not like Russians imagined this invasion of Ukraine, that they will just be peacefully sitting in Russia there, watching their television and seeing their armies parading on Ukrainian streets. No, they can see this so-called special military operation returning home to Russia, and this is very, very important in seen as, for example, destruction of Russian oil refineries, Russian generals, etc., etc. And on this note, I also want to once again remind our viewers that we are still running the fundraiser for the 4th Operative Brigade. Please check out the description, because we want to supply my brigade with drones, and we highly appreciate everybody who makes this possible. And on this note, I would also like to switch to a bit different topic, which, it's not like I really want to switch to this topic, because for some reason I feel much more motivated talking about what happens in Ukraine than what happens in the White House. So we all know that Trump now proposes a new plan for Ukraine, and in his imagination, this war can be easily finished if Ukraine basically capitulates, which means giving up Ukrainian territories, which means basically capitulating. Let's call this for what it is. We all understand the implications of Trump suggesting Ukraine to basically capitulate and agree to all Russia's demands, which is something absolutely not fair. It's unjust, because Ukraine was invaded. Ukraine did nothing wrong to Russia. But what are your thoughts about this? What are your thoughts about Trump's current position?
Oh, well, we have seen the peace plan administration, and I think both of us agree it's not a peace plan, it's a maximalist capitulation plan. It is not even a sort of blueprint for Ukraine's defeat. It's a total capitulation of Ukraine without any shadow of compromise, any shadow. Russia gets everything what Russia got until now and more. Sanctions get lifted. Ukraine acknowledges all Russian territorial wins. Ukraine reduces its military components. Ukraine abandons NATO. Ukraine pays the United States money for what? And. So if you look into this peace plan, it looks like Ukraine has attacked Russia, got beaten in Russia, and now pays reparations for its aggression, which is a bit strange because it's Russia, which a country which attacked Ukraine and has broken international law. In this context, the European proposal of peace plan, which we also have read in more or less general details, looks a lot like a compromise. Like a compromise is when two parties agree on some terms, right? And it's not like I have my maximalist demands and you have your maximalist demands, and we try to impose them on each other. No. And in this situation, in this particular situation, we always need to keep in mind that according to any law, to any international law, Ukraine has its right to have Ukrainian maximalist demands because they are fundamentally legal. Ukraine doesn't want to get something which is not Ukrainian. Ukraine wants its rights back. And in an ideal world, in a world where international law is being respected, the international coalition, an international coalition of willing, would have assisted Ukraine militarily and would have helped what is Ukrainian and restore the territorial sovereignty on the 1991 level. And the question would come about a compromise, how much Russia needs to be punished. And that should have been a question of a compromise, but not if Ukraine gets the whole territory back or not the whole territory back, because Russia doesn't have any right to keep any square inch of Ukrainian land. But we are not living in an ideal world, and we are talking now about a compromise which foresees a violation of international law in the part of Ukrainian legal rights. So now we come to this European proposal, right? And the European proposal is a compromise because it foresees freezing of the contact line. Not like Russia gets beaten and pushed away, and then we talk about how much should we cut Russian army, should Russia be denuclearized completely or partially, etc. No, it says, okay, the contact line keeps preserved. That is the compromise, already a huge one, because Ukraine gives what is Ukrainian and Russia gets what is not Russian. And then we say that Russia brings all kidnapped children back because it's not on a negotiation table. Because children are not a part of a negotiation. They can be achieved no compromise on children. There are prisoners of war, because prisoners of war are not a part of negotiation. We know the unhuman conditions which they suffer from. We know that prisoners of war, Ukrainian soldiers, get tortured, executed, humiliated. They got deprived of communication, especially those from Azov. And we know that Russia hates every Ukrainian prisoner of war, but especially they hate Azov soldiers. And Azov soldiers never been allowed to write any letter to their relatives since 3 years.
Not even
We know that
not even the International Red Cross has access to Ukrainian prisoners of war in Russia, because I spoke to different guys who were there, who were actually captured, and they have never seen a representative of a Red Cross in Russian prison. Never.
absolutely, absolutely. I personally talked to a former Russian prisoner of war, Ukrainian soldier of Azov Brigade, now a corps, and he told me that the first time in his life when he saw a Red Cross representative was the day when Azovstal garrison has capitulated, and the Red Cross has met them and told them, guys, now we will accompany you on your way, and you can count on us, and we will protect your rights. So the guy spent over 1 year in Russian duty, injured, tortured, starved, etc. And then he was exchanged. And on the exchange procedure on the border, he saw a Red Cross representative for the second time in his life. And then the Red Cross representative said, "Oh, great that you got exchanged. You need to thank us." Mhm. That is exactly how it happens. And I want to repeat, the Azov soldiers suffer most among all Ukrainian soldiers. Not only that, every Ukrainian soldier suffers. And none of Ukrainian soldiers get treated as international conventions like the Geneva Convention demands from the parties to treat the prisoners of war. So that's a problem, and prisoners of war needs to be returned all without condition. It's not a part of compromise. But then we can talk about, for example, what is the sort of demilitarization of this line, and what is the regime of policy in these areas, etc. That can be a part of a compromise according to this European plan. Once again, from my perspective, what I know about Russia, what I know about what the Russians do and how they respect treaties, it will lead us to nowhere, because Russia will not respect this contract. But at least it is created as something which would have stand under a presumption that both sides want to reach some sort of feasible result. But what Trump has offered is not a compromise, is a punishment of Ukraine stronger than Nazi Germany has got after World War II.
I completely agree with you, and I have a question for you. Do you remember any case in recent history where a Western leader advocated territorial concessions to an aggressor?
Oh, yes. If we look at the Crimea discussion in Germany after 2014, there have been pretty many political leaders currently acting or retired who were advocating for a new Crimea. And it was absolutely against the international law. It was also absolutely against towards Ukraine. thinking about that Ukraine has suffered a lot under German Nazis, who have occupied Ukraine and killed 16% of Ukrainian population and destroyed hundreds and hundreds of towns and cities. But it was a part of a discussion. I still remember how the former German Chancellor, Helmut Schmidt, who was a pretty old retired person back then, but a very active participant of talk shows, when he was asked what he thinks about Crimea, and he started to repeat the same Russian lie about Crimea being in its essence a Russian territory, so important for the Russians, have special ties to Russia, and therefore Russia has special rights or special special connections to Crimea, and may have some sort of control over Crimea. And I need to tell you that Helmut Schmidt was an officer of German military forces under Adolf Hitler. He was a fighter pilot in the Nazi army. He was serving Adolf Hitler as a soldier, fighting on the East Front, killing people there. Sorry. Exactly. And when you listen to a guy who actively participated in spreading Nazi slavery over Ukraine, and now being a respectful older gentleman with his cigarette, and he was the one allowed to smoke on German talk shows, and he's sitting and playing a wise, clever, over the battlefield mind, who is speaking, talking about the real things, global strategies and global challenges, not about some narrow-minded wish to keep the territorial integrity and sovereignty. No, he's talking about greater game, about the United States, Russia, nuclear war, Europe, security architecture, etc. You served Adolf Hitler. You have given the oath to serve him. You need to shut up and listen, and not to spread your delusional ideas. But nobody in Germany told him so. Everyone said, oh, that is our great social democratic chancellor who was so good and who needs to be listened. And that was the problem. And the new generation of social democrats, like Matthias Blatzek and the others, they were all over the talk shows telling how we need to respect Russia's wish to keep Crimea Russian, or to make Crimea Russian. And that was a very clear case of how current European leaders advocated for territorial gains as a result of unprovoked aggression.
That's extremely interesting to hear. But I know that pro-Russian sentiments were kind of high before the full-scale invasion in Germany. Again, for reasons I cannot explain, but maybe you can explain, because nowadays, even though they're still present, but comparing to what I would hear coming from the German media, for example, back then, or German speakers, it's very different. And Marino 4691, I know that Sergei is very laggy, but I think that we can cope with this because Sergei is right now in Ukraine, and internet might not be really good there, not as good as we all expect. So please let's be patient with this. And again, we are really sorry about it, but not much we can do. So returning to this question. What changed, and if something changed?
Oh well, a lot of things have changed, and I think the biggest change, the largest change in all this situation was that the German population has seen, the people, the voters, that it doesn't work. Doesn't work. You just may not ignore the reality, and we know that Bucha was a sort of a wake up call for many when people have suddenly seen that Russia is doing things which we believed are impossible under modern conditions. And we have realized that cities got bombed once again, that Putin's rhetoric is identical to rhetorics of the Nazis during the early years of World War II, and and that is what actually makes me all the time when I realize that a German political nation is much more progressive than the German political elite. And when I see how many people donate for Ukraine, and once again, please look at the link in the description of this video. There is a donation link for the drones of the 4th Brigade of the National Guard of Ukraine. Please donate. There is a PayPal link. There is a bank description. You can send your money also via bank transfer. And if you are located in Germany, you may get, and if you donate 200 euro or more, you are entitled to get a Spendenbescheinigung, a tax certificate for your donation. So don't hesitate to donate. Not only about not because of the certificate, of course, but first of all because Ukrainian soldiers and Ukrainians need your support. They need these drones to save lives. They need these drones to continue to live, to exist. And so we all know what will happen if Ukraine fails. I don't believe that Russian army can be stopped in Europe by anyone except of Ukrainian army. And but coming back, Starsky, to your question, what has happened? I think that many people have realized that we are not in a fairy tale anymore. This is very real. This is very real. This is about life and death, and it will not be like in a Hollywood movie when, in the last moment, the rotor blades of American helicopters will sound louder and louder, and several transport helicopters will arrive, and you will get evacuated, or the enemy will get grilled by missile strike, and then Stars and Stripes banner will be in the sky, and strong and brave US American Marine will take the survivors and say, "Yes, you're safe now, mate. Holt will bring you to hospital." No, it will not. It will not take place. It will not happen. And the only hope we have are we ourselves and our neighbors and friends. And you know, it's much better than me that in Ukraine now, most soldiers of the Ukrainian army are Ukrainian civilians who used to be civilians until recently, who have never thought about going to the army, who were never dreaming about being a soldier or fighting a war. And they don't want to fight a war even now. They want to come back to their families, to their peaceful life, but they have to fight because otherwise the destiny will be much worse. And that is, I think, many in Germany start to understand now. Or we do not have any way to protect ourselves besides the way of getting stronger and relying on those who have already made this way, like Ukraine?
I agree on that. Frankly speaking, I was so much surprised. I was genuinely surprised that, when we were attacked, the world reacted with such a power, with such a strength, and strength coming on the first place emotionally, that we stand with Ukraine, we stand against what Russia does to those peaceful people, we stand against Russian atrociousness. When Ukrainian refugees started arriving to Berlin, Till Lindemann from Rammstein was there. He was literally helping the front man of Rammstein band. He was literally there, and the band was like working there, helping Ukrainian refugees to accommodate and things like that, which is crazy. And speaking of Germans, I was so much surprised that they are so involved in this. And apparently, I think that I would really agree with future Chancellor Merz that Germany, maybe not vocally, but factically, will show a good example on how to protect the European integrity. I would really, really like to see that. And speaking of American helicopters with stars and stripes, of course, every Ukrainian would like to see that, and I would root for that. I would root for United States to keep being, the center for democracy, the leaders for democracy, and things like that. But unfortunately, I think it's not the case with the current administration. Do you think Trump's statement can influence European allies, which is important to understand? Do you think that his statements can influence those European allies who largely support Ukraine and Ukraine's territorial integrity? And does Trump, in your opinion, still have authority over the key European countries, or it's already changed?
Well, it has already influenced the decision making in Europe, not the way which Trump wanted to achieve, but many European leaders have realized that the world has ultimately changed, and we may like it or not. We may think that as a worst case scenario, it's a nightmare. We want all to wake up and see someone like John McCain or JF Kennedy, or I don't know, whoever, Roosevelt, Truman, you name them, be in a White House. But we have Donald Trump, and Donald Trump is not alone. He's not a deviation of the United States. He is a representative of a mainstream. I think that was very it was a very big mistake in the question of foreign policy and global security architecture, that Donald Trump is a minority of the US, of the US elites, that he is a deviation, that it's enough to have like Kamala Harris or Joe Biden or whatever, and the situation will change. It's only one delusional who needs to be removed, or we need to hope, wait that he will be removed. No, Donald Trump stays globally in global security questions. He stays for the same ideas as Joe Biden or Barack Obama. Yes, he's acting in a way more aggressive and rude and uncultivated way, and insults everyone and tells things which sounds horrible and which Joe Biden would have never said, or Obama, who were of course of a quite different aesthetic type. But what has Trump done? Like not in details, like not like sending his envoy to Putin and telling that Putin is a great guy, but strategically, trying to pull US out of any involvement in Europe. The same, trying to offer dictators, genocidal dictators, something in a hope that they will not go further. Just think about the Perigruska or Perizagruska, this reset policy under Obama. The same shit. Or wasn't he more into fearing that Russia may get destroyed and therefore the nuclear proliferation can happen and other things can happen, China can get stronger? Isn't it the same what Joe Biden used to do all the way? Not trusting Ukrainians and not believing that Ukraine has a right and knowledge and power to decide about its own fate. Once again, the same level. So I think that yes, he is extreme in this movement. Yes, he is throwing stones all around in our glass house. But the direction where he goes remains the same. And therefore, I think that for many European leaders, it was a very painful wake up when they have realized that they hoped it's only a short time, it's only something which they need to go through for a couple of years and then the things will change. No, they will not change for another like 15, 20, 25 years. Like in the history of the US, there have been enough of periods when the US tried to pull back to a sort of isolationist policy. And it took many years every time, and a huge and stressful and painful shock to come back to the role of a country which is involved in global affairs. But now I think it will be a bit harder for the US because the economic power of the US is quite different compared to the last, let me say, 80 years. Quite different. Will the US be able to maintain the same level of involvement under the condition that in the next like 10, 15, 20 years, the economic power of the US will not significantly grow, and I don't understand why it should grow significantly. I don't know. And I'm afraid that is what many people in the countries which we would not like to see as the global leaders, like China, understand very well. And China looks at that and thinks, okay, we just need to wait a bit, maybe 10 years, maybe 20 years. But we will get our revenge and we will take the place which is ours by right. And not the US will dictate us what to do. And Taiwan will come back to ours, and that port will come back to ours, and we will be the new masters of the world.
It's very, very scary to imagine, of course. I wonder if Trump's stance can somehow shift mainstream Republican views on U.S. foreign policy, or generally, again, as you said, what Trump does is the mainstream foreign policy.
Oh, I don't know. What do you think? Like, what could be here? What could be different here? It's hard to say for me.
Hard to say either, because again, I'm not the expert in these questions. That's why I invite clever people like you and listen to their opinions.
We need Jake Bro here. He would have explained us everything. I really miss him here because like now we're talking about the things where he could have demonstrated his really level of passion, knowledge, and insider views. And I'm totally sorry that we don't have him now.
Yeah, I agree on that. Luckily, we also have a lot of American viewers right now in the chat because I'm Ukrainian. You are basically Ukrainian as well. We also live in Germany, and we're talking about the American foreign policies, which I think you guys in the chat understand much better than us. One thing I wanted to talk about was this recent case in the CIA, but before we switch to the CIA, let's remind ourselves
Yeah, my
that.
greetings to all the CIA guys and girls who are recording this conversation. A disclaimer: we totally respect what you do, and we stay on your side.
And where are our salaries finally? Because I was called so many times, by different bots that I was like a CIA dude, by a lot of mega representatives. By the way, that I was working for CIA before the elections. Where are those paychecks? I'm still waiting. Oh my god.
Yeah, I'm so happy that German tax office doesn't believe these things, because they say the same about me, that I got paid by CIA. I think, oh my gosh, when the German tax office will send me an email asking, "Hello, Mr. Sunlani, where is the tax payments from your CIA paycheck?" I say, okay, what should I do now?
Yeah, that's dangerous. That's like walking on thin ice. But besides that, my dear friends, let me remind you that we're running the fundraiser for my brigade, Hostomel Brigade, Rubizh. We are fundraising for drones, and drones save lives. And please check out all the necessary information in the description. Me and my brother Sergei will be very, very grateful for that. Switching from Washington to Washington, how is it even possible that the son of a senior CIA official ended up fighting and dying for Russia? Because okay, let's first talk about this one. Let's start with this one, and we'll talk about the rest later.
Yeah, absolutely. And first, when I read first this news today in the morning, I thought, is it something like The Onion, or is there some sarcastic, satiric project which just generates news, absurd news? No, it was not, unfortunately. So, for those who are not familiar yet with this story, a son of CIA deputy head, deputy director responsible for digitalization of the agency, Julian Gloss, is this deputy head, and her son, uh, who was 21. He started his political journey through the world, visiting one hippie, leftist, environmentalist, anti-capitalist community after another, changing his names, like delivering bread to the poor, working in some communities, which is not bad. That's okay, maybe untypical for some people, but not bad, clearly. And then he started to posing with hammer and sickle in his hands, uh, and already demonstrating a sort of attitude to communist ideas, which is something which you would not expect from a child of a CIA deputy head. And then he went to Moscow, to Russia, and documented very openly his Russian travel, making photos of Russia. He visited Crimea, occupied by Russia. He obviously loved what he saw there. Then he moved to Russia, and he moved to Russia in early 23, and in September 23, he volunteered for the Russian army. He volunteered as an American citizen for the Russian army. He publicly said he posted his photos in Russian uniform. He volunteered for an airborne division in Russia, and he went to Ukraine. And it was September 23, I repeat it. And in February 24, like 5 months after that, his mother was appointed, by the way, not by Donald Trump, by Joe Biden's administration, as a deputy head of the CIA. And then I say, okay, I thought like some jobs require some security clearance. And we know that under Donald Trump, security clearance regarding Russia is not something which is being taken seriously. But 1 year ago, my gosh, and CIA, are you serious? Yes, they were serious. So the guy was obviously killed in Ukraine as a Russian soldier. And then a message was published by his family, obviously, describing his way as the way of a person who wanted to be a hero and save the world. And he has tragically died in Central Europe. Okay, so for me, you can see, like, I'm clearly disturbed now, and I don't even look straight into the camera because not because the CIA guy is standing here. Hi. No, but because I cannot believe until now, despite the fact that I have double checked it and triple checked it and read different sources, etc., from different serious media, and I still cannot believe how this story could happen in our world in all the dimensions, that a child of this family has derailed so gravely that he ended as a mercenary in a genocidal war of aggression, that one of the most security relevant jobs in the United States was given to a person with direct links to a Russian soldier. And has anyone thought about the fact that she could have been manipulated, blackmailed by the Russians? Her son was in Russia. He could have been like arrested, tortured, killed, and she could have been informed about that. I don't even mention here like the very obvious level of problematic political attitude of this son. But the fact that somebody's son is in hands of the most murderous and terrorist regime should have meant a disqualification for this job. And like all these levels, it's just insane. It is just insane, absolutely.
Oh my God. Security clearance, that is the key word, because, for example, I know I don't know about American Army, I don't know about CIA, Ukrainian Army, Ukrainian National Guard, for example. If you have an access to the state secret, even like on a small level, like sending secret telegrams from unit to unit or from unit to headquarters, in order to acquire the access to the state secret, in order to be granted this access, you need to pass security clearance. I know it from my experience. And for example, if you have like a brother living in Australia, you have to give detailed description on how many times do you communicate, where exactly he lives, what is his address, what kind of family he has. You have to give all information on your family and all information on people you communicate with from abroad. And that is a very, very important thing that you cannot avoid it. That's a state secret. Come on. On the other hand, of course, I don't know. Maybe of course, she was assigned to this position during Biden administration. I cannot imagine that, having connection with Russians is actually encouraged. We have different.
Yeah, that is exactly. Would she has been appointed now? Nobody would be surprised. Really, nobody. But 1 year ago, sorry.
Yeah. Of course, we have different example. We have JD Vance and we have Nate Vance, right? Those are two different stories, absolutely different stories. One is a dude who role played a combat reporter and never fired a shot, and another one who actually fought for the right cause. And on this in this example, JD Vance would receive an additional boost actually for being a vice president because his brother fought for the right cause. He didn't fight for terrorists, not brother, cousin. He didn't fight for the terrorists. He fought for defenders of democracy in Europe. He fought for Ukraine. So that would actually give him like a political, benefits, like a political boost. But in this case, when you have a son literally fighting for Russians, that is something so crazy. In your opinion, could this guy, her son, could he be used to pressure his relatives, like her, for example, or to acquire some specific secret information, or to lobby some kind of requests from that side, from FSB, because he's there, he's in their hands.
Well, that is of course the first thing which you always think, like how can this fact be used by the Russians? And I think we do not need to make any illusions for us. The Russians knew perfectly who he was. There is not so many cases of an American guy, leftist hippie, environmentalist who comes to Russia and decides to volunteer for Russian Airborne Division. And of course, he was checked. And of course, all his relations were obvious for the Russians. And of course, they knew who were his parents. The question is, what did they do with this information? Would they try to directly use it to, as you have mentioned, like blackmail the mother, or was it something different? Could they try to tunnel some information through him to the mother, or could they just mention it like occasionally during some meeting between FSB and CIA, which takes place sometimes, like, oh, Russia is such a good country. We're so peaceful. Your son knows it better than we can tell you. And that's enough. Actually, that's enough. Then the other side knows what you want to say. And like how reckless the FSB is, and they never hesitate on attacking people, on killing people, on using methods which are not so popular among intelligence services, which try to de-escalate the competition and know that in a war of everyone against everyone, there will be no winners. So many intelligence services, we know that they do not use all the arsenal of the lethal methods or other methods. They just try to keep things civilized, but the FSB does not. That's why we speculate if the Havana syndrome, something which comes from FSB, and nobody says that Havana syndrome can come from, like, say, German intelligence service, because we know Germans will not do it. Not because there are no such devices in German. But okay, I think there are no such devices, but still. But first of all, because Germans would never dare to do that, but Russians would. And I think that the mother, of course, knew where her son is. Once again, he wrote very publicly about it. The Russians knew who he is. Therefore, the mother knew that the Russians knew where he is and who he is. The only question is, what did she do and what did she not do, knowing that and because of this knowledge? And here I have no answer. But the whole situation is just terrible, and that's a question to those who have appointed her and who have tolerated her on this position, knowing that there is such a story in her family.
One thing that, of course, such situations scare the heck out of me, seriously. When you hear stories like that, that is, as our viewers said in the chat, onion news are actual news nowadays. But on the other hand, I feel big embarrassment on behalf of people serving and working in the CIA, because me as a state's, as a former state's employee, right, as a former military man and officer, I know what kind of disgrace and embarrassment it is for people actually serving and working there. Because when some of your chiefs or command does that kind of shit, okay, let's call it for what it is, on such a level, and that literally drops a shadow on every professional who dedicates his or her life to this job and does this job absolutely well. That's why, when I learned about this stuff today, I felt big empathy and feeling of support towards common employees of this agency, people who dedicate their life to defend the United States. I literally feel for them as a former state's employee myself. That is absolutely crazy.
I've just got in the chat a message from Cyrilla von Sintra, who said, Sergey, I've sent you a picture, and I opened it, and it's a photo of J.D. Vance wearing this famous red T-shirt with the Soviet symbol, with the Soviet national emblem. The hammer and sickle. And you asked the question, like, how is it possible? It's possible.
Yeah. We have several questions from our viewers. First of all, Suicidal Banana asks, was the general dying claimed by Ukraine, or was it Russian rebels? From what I remember, Sergey, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that General Intelligence Directorate claimed this case.
I also think so. And once again, I don't think that Russian underground groups, which obviously exist to a certain level, that they are capable of such attacks. What we know, the spontaneous resistance groups, which appear in several regions of Russia and which get a sort of support from Ukraine, surely. But they mostly attack very low level targets, mostly unprotected, like communication devices along the railroads, power stations, and the top level of their targets are low level offices of military administrations, like army recruitment offices, police stations, etc. I will not believe that any resistance group in Russia, which is mostly very spontaneous groups of like untrained civilians who just want to express their anger and rage but don't know how to do it. And I don't think that any of this group would have enough knowledge and skills and observation resources to know the routes of this general and access to ammunition and access to explosives and to install the core, to create a mine, to install a mine into this core, to wait for the general coming along the core and to get this core explored. I don't believe that it's possible technically. And that doesn't mean that these people do not exist. They exist. But once again, what they do is they think, okay, I don't like it. I want to make something. What can I do? Maybe I will try to negatively impact technological level of communication of the railroads to stop the trains bringing equipment to the front. That is what they do. But not I go to Moscow, I will create a car bomb and using industrially produced MON mines, Russian analogy of Claymore mines, and will kill a general.
Yeah, I agree on that. We have another very interesting question, by the way. But before we move to this question from Betsy, you're there in the chat, I know. I would like to remind you, my dear friends, that we are fundraising for the drones for my brigade, which is 4th Operative Brigade of the National Guard, Hostomel Brigade, one of the first, if not the first, brigades in the security segment of Ukraine that adopted NATO standards and its staff structure, which proved working. And one of the first brigades that gave fight to Russian invaders on the very first morning of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So please check out the link and all the description down below under this video. And I would like to ask you this question from Betsy, because I think it's really important and very important for our viewers and our friends in the chat and everybody watching this video to understand, because, you know, we are above the top with all sorts of negative news, all sorts of negative updates every single day. And Betsy is asking Starsky and Sergey, how do you deal with the situation in Ukraine? I think I would also a bit rephrase this question. What keeps you motivated? How do you vent? How do you deal with stress? What keeps you running?
Whew. Oh, that's a tough question. That's a tough question. I had like two today. I had two conversations on that. One was, so to say, one was um, a very neutral of trying of reaching a level of self-reflection and analyzing things. And it was a conversation with my good friend Yevhen Hlibovitsky, who is a Ukrainian thinker and an amazing person who practically taught me Ukrainian in 2015, 2016. and he's a amazing person. If you don't follow Yevgeny Libovitsky on Twitter, do it right now and look for his statements and his speeches on YouTube in English. He's an amazing person, and he described the situation like a situation of a tired mother of a child who is so tired, so she doesn't want to stand up and go and make a breakfast for her children. Uh, but she stands up day by day and does it just because there is no other way, because she knows she must do it. And that is how he described what Ukrainians do and what many of us do. And I'm not a Ukrainian, but still, I feel obliged. I feel in duty to Ukraine to do what I can do for Ukraine, because Ukraine defends me and my country. And another thing was in the evening when I arrived to Lviv and was already tired, and I had like some WhatsApp chat with my very good friend who I value a lot, and we had like how it happens. We had some sort of random chatting when I do my stuff, another person does their stuff, and we chat. And there was like some expressions in the chat which I obviously misunderstood. And now, like 3 hours ago, I wouldn't have reacted any negative way. But back then, I was tired. It was very fresh, and some sort of a discussion appeared, and I was angry, and there was like a sort of a very loaded, emotionally loaded exchange of things, which ended, thanks God, in a peaceful agreement. But then, after it happened, I was already like entering this discussion with Starsky, and I was thinking, Sergey, what the hell is going on? You go back then into that discussion, there was nothing in this discussion what could have provoked any sort of misunderstanding or God save conflict. But obviously the level of tolerance, of everyday tolerance of anyone, is so high that it leads to such situations. How we cope with that? Just go step to the square one, exactly as a mother who wakes up every morning and cleans the house and takes care of the kids. My deep respect to all mothers who do it, because like fathers pretty often do not. And here the whole nation which does it, and those allies who like me try to. We are privileged. Like I have my German passport. I can go to Germany anytime. Uh I'm privileged. I understand it. Um, and what Ukrainians do is just unimaginably. And you still look. It is already the 4th year of the war, and you would have expected the level of drugs abuse and other things exorbitant. You don't see people on the streets like under drugs abuse, under drugs influence. Like you see, of course, like in the center of the city, you see one or another person like alcoholized. You see in Berlin more alcoholized people than in Kiev. You go to the east, to the front. You stop at each gasoline station, and Ukrainian gasoline stations would have been banned in most U.S. American states because they have very open selling of alcohol, of liquors, of whiskey, cognac, gin, vodka, like everything. just like have like the dozens of bottles staying around, and you can just grab them. You can just take them and bring to the cashier. They're not even behind the lock. And that was all the time in Ukraine before the full-scale invasion. Actually, I spoke to some people who believed that existence of such gasoline stations had significantly slowed down movement of Russian troops, because the Russians just immobilized themselves on every gasoline station, which they of course looted. But what I want to say that you go and you see like these endless batteries of liqueurs in the gasoline stations in a war zone, or just 100 kilometers to the war zone. And you see a lot of soldiers there and civilians, and you do not see any drunk person. And you do not see any person who is drinking alcohol. And everyone is polite, and soldiers like sitting around, sipping their coffee, coming back to their cars, talking with very calm voices, not loudly or not aggressively. And that is every time for me. I have seen people who are nervous, or and it happens when people are nervous. They you feel that they're nervous. They start acting aggressively, chaotically, and loudly. And in this case, it's not what you observe. Even if you come very close to the front line, even on the checkpoint, the soldiers who check your papers, they are never aggressive. They're never aggressive, they're never loud, they're always very polite. And I think that is something here which is very typical for the Ukrainian way of dealing with things. And I personally want to learn it, because it's not what I master.
First of all, my friend, thank you so much for your experience. And you mentioned that you're not Ukrainian, you are. And it doesn't mean Ukrainian by blood or something else, because Ukraine today turned into something bigger than country. And, as much as other people around the world are wearing shirts or some kind of Ukrainian symbol on their car, on their clothes, as much Ukrainians feel privileged to wear patches with flags of Germany, of United States, of United Kingdom, Australia, because Ukraine is a bit more than a country today. Ukraine is a good indication of, I would say, sanity and decency. That's why on my channel we have this membership, which is not expensive at all. It's called We Are Ukraine. And addressing the question from Betsy, how do we deal with situation in Ukraine? In my case, it's simple. When I realize that situation in Ukraine is bad, I go and serve in the army, a bit short than 10 years. And then I just keep doing something. I keep trying to inform people. I keep trying to debunk Russian disinformation. I keep trying to deliver information from sources that are hard to access to people who don't speak Ukrainian or English. I'm trying to show some kind of my expertise on communications. I'm not a big expert in politics or geopolitics or strategy, because I'm a humble captain. And on the other hand, I have a background in communications, and I keep doing something. And this is something that keeps me running. And also, guys, one very important thing, because, for example, Average L says that he's struggling with all the negativity on the YouTube, all the evil on the YouTube. We should always reward ourselves with something, and our psychological state always depends on our physical state. They're always connected. If you feel depressed psychologically, physically, you will also acquire all kinds of weaknesses and diseases. And vice versa. If your tooth hurts like hell, then you never feel like happy and you don't enjoy life. You feel bad because of that. That's why you should always reward yourself with something good. And what is the easiest thing to reward yourself is a proper food. You can find something yummy, something tasty. I don't know about other things, but generally something small and tasty always improves your mood, and that is why people like this channel so much. We always talk about food. We have several more questions, by the way.
And speaking of food, I'm waiting now for the first harvest of Ukrainian tomatoes. Because
Oh,
gosh, I spent in Ukraine like 6 years before the full-scale invasion, and I brought these tomatoes to Germany when I came to Berlin for 1 week. I just had hard case plastic containers where I put these tomatoes inside because they were so delicate. You could crush them by little crushes. So I brought them in very solid plastic hard case containers just to enjoy like a tomato cucumber and onion salad with salt, etc. It was delicious all the time. I'm waiting for it. And I still wonder how Ukrainians manage to produce such amazing quality of food amid the full-scale war. Amid the full-scale war, you have vegetables, you have poultry, you have everything which is locally produced here in Ukraine, and you think when you buy it, you really think about how many people worked for that under bombs. Those who harvested a lot of farmers, farming companies, they are in the south, where farmers cultivate their fields, which have been occupied by Russians, and where landmines are still present until now. And then logistics go through logistic hubs, which get bombed by the Russians. And you think like the tomato you got, or the cucumber you got, or I don't know, like raspberry or whatever, or meat or poultry or milk. It is produced under war conditions, and it is of a better quality than something I buy in a German supermarket. And then I really want, like, every time I tell myself, Sergey, you really need to organize a study trip for German Ministry of Agriculture and Protection of Consumer Rights to Ukraine, and get them a study tour to the liberated areas of Kherson and Zaporizhia regions, where under war conditions this food is get produced. So they come back to Germany and tell the story how Ukrainians do it under such conditions.
I agree on that. I would say definitely that one of the reasons why Ukrainians always have good food and good quality food is probably the result of a tragedy of Holodomor. And I can guarantee that this is the reason. But you mentioned tomatoes, and I recall my grandma. She lived in a village not far from Kryvyi Rih, and she had like this tiny orchard, not orchard. When they grow veggies in the village, огород.
Yeah, like a small garden behind your house where you grew
Yeah,
where you grow up, where you grow your vegetables. I
yeah,
also don't
yeah.
know the word.
I have no idea, but generally garden. Let's call it garden, okay. And she grew tomatoes, and she had red tomatoes, homegrown tomatoes. But the coolest were like yellow tomatoes, you know? And when you smell them, oh,
Okay, now we're talking, but I'm starting to think about food. But please, do not go too deep into details of the food, because this conversation will end badly. Um, what I want also to
people
say, like,
unsubscribing.
yeah, like I'm so much privileged working here in Ukraine with Ukrainian partners, because you know when you like we have people here, like for example Igor Semivoloz, who is a very good friend of mine. Thank God for that, and who is an amazing Ukrainian political expert, also an expert in Middle East problematic, and speaks fluent Arabic, and does a lot of great things. And you know what? He's a passionate gardener. And that is what always fascinated me in Ukrainians, because Ukrainians are a nation which combines this gardening and military component. And I think that comes now. I think I am speculating a lot, and any scientist, historian, or sociologist would have killed me on sight now for heresy. That is what I feel in my heart, and that's how I explain it for me. So please forgive me my profanity. So I explain it for myself that in this tradition of Cossacks, when people there was no division between like peasants who were producing foods for some aristocrats who were warriors. Like no division between the mercenaries and the commanders, like the knights, mercenaries who do the war stuff and pillaging and robbing and killing, and peasants who were unarmed, who sometimes revolted, but mostly were practically serving class. In Ukraine, it was not the case. In Ukraine, there were the Cossacks, and Cossacks were neither warriors nor peasants. They were warriors and peasants, or peasants warriors, or warriors peasants. They trained for the army. They formed their own democratically ruled military units, and that's also very interesting. A democratically ruled army where soldiers vote for their platoon leaders vote for lieutenants vote for general, and general can be dismissed when he is like a sort of unsuccessful, something like a pirates republic, but without robbing.
And that's Ukraine,
And
like 17th century.
yes, exactly. And one of the first European constitutions was wrote in 1600 something by Philip Orlik.
Yeah.
And it was practically the basic law of this Cossack state, describing the duties of the hetman, of the military lord, under which conditions the military lord may serve and may rule, and under which conditions he will be removed from his position. Like incredible. And these people, they were gardeners, and had their horses and cows, etc. And then they went to war and they came back, etc. And that this combines these narratives of happiness. Happiness is returning back from the war to peaceful life, but in order to preserve and save and defend your peaceful life, you need to be a good warrior. And coming back to Igor Semivoloz, who I value a lot, he's exactly this person. Like he's doing all this security stuff and international policy, and all these discussions on how many watts we need for the victory. And then he says, "Yeah, but now we come to important thing. I have produced from my like peppers, which I have planted, and I have this jalapeno and California Reaper and blah blah blah, and I have produced like three different sorts of hot sauce. And this is like top hot. This is not that hot. This is interesting with additional fermentation." And I say, "My God, my God, have we?" have we just talked about the military balance on the Zaporizhia front? Yeah, but we can talk about it also. Taste this and this and this, and that is absolutely amazing. You really need to live through this to get taste of this, and it is absolutely amazing. Of course, you can find such people also in Germany and in other areas, and you can have like some university professor that can do something with his hands and delivering something. But in Ukraine, it's just everywhere, and in Ukraine, it is the mainstream way of life, and it's just amazing.
I agree with you. You go to a position, for example, there's like a platoon position, right? And you always, if it's a Ukrainian position, you always find, like next to the trench, you always find some kind of tiny garden that is completely, managed. It's very, very cute looking, with onions growing or things like that. And the guys just grow them when they have time, of course. If the position, if the front line in that area is more or less stationary, of course, they always grow like onions, they always grow like parsley and things like that. And they cook, I don't know, porridge with meat or um, pasta with whatever Frühstück, and they always add their homegrown, trench-grown onions or green onions to their food, and it just tastes so amazing. Every position I visited, our positions of other guys, it was always like that. And sometimes you can see like the guys just go level extra. They just make like tiny fences, self-made makeshift fences around those tiny gardens. And you just look at that and you think that is literally what, Taras Shevchenko was talking about. The bug beetles flying over the cherry trees and family sitting in the garden and things like that. Okay, I think we should probably go and
cook a tasty dinner.
yeah, absolutely. Help ourselves. Help ourselves remain sane, and also I would like to say big thanks to our dear friends and family in the chat. Big thanks to everybody who supports my brigade. This is very important to me personally. And also big thanks to all the members who support my channel and help to keep it running. Also, big appreciation to our moderators in the chat, Ali, Newman, and Katie. Big thanks to you guys. And Sergey, do you have some message to our dear viewers?
Well, we will continue with these streams with Operator Starsky, and I hope next week we'll have also some additional guests to this show. And it's still secret who it will be, but you will enjoy the person. And don't forget to donate for the Rubizh Brigade, the brigade where Operator Starsky served, the brigade which has stopped the Russian invasion at the Hostomel airport in very early morning of 24th February 2022, preventing Russia's blitzkrieg, preventing Russia's landing at Hostomel and taking Kiev. So the guys who literally destroyed Russian plans, and they need drones now. And we have promised them we will raise money for them, and we'll purchase them drones. And you can help this donation campaign in the description of this video. Check for the donation links, PayPal and bank. If you're located in Germany and you're a German taxpayer, you get a Spendenbescheinigung, a tax deduction certificate. Just contact the European Resilience Initiative Center and give your home address where we can send the certificate. So donate, because the 4th Rubizh Brigade needs drones, and these people, they all want to come home in peace, not under Trump's peace deal. No, real peace, stable peace. So stay with Ukraine, stand with Ukraine, support Ukraine, donate for Rubizh Brigade drones, and keep watching this show, because we will have an interesting discussion next week, and I hope there will be great news. Not only this week news like with the Russian general, but some more and more and more.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, my friend. Also, be safe in Lviv, because unfortunately Russian missiles and drones fly big distances. So keep safe. Well, you know yourself, like, well, what I'm going to tell you. You are probably more experienced than me at this point.
Oh, Ukraine is the safest place for me. Like, we know that here you know where the danger can come from. If you're walking streets in Berlin or somewhere else, you will not hear a siren, an air raid siren, when something can happen. But here you're remote France, and I value it a lot.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Okay, my dear friends, Sergey and everybody in the chat, thank you so much once again. Have yourself something good tonight. And we'll see you later. Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава!
And glory to all the decent people of the world. Be safe.